Okay, can you tell us your name, please?
My name's Shirley.
Is this a story about your daughter and her babies?
Yes,
Okay.
that's where it all starts. 2006, she became pregnant with twins. They considered it a high-risk pregnancy, I think because it was twins from the beginning. So she did everything she was supposed to. They ended up telling her that she had to be induced because they were concerned about one of the twins. So they sent her on a Friday to be induced. She didn't have the children till Monday afternoon. I guess they weren't ready yet. And she had a boy and a girl. They each were about 5 pounds or so.
And we have some pictures here. I'm just going to... Is this your daughter here?
Yes. So my little grandson Liam was jaundiced, and they were aware of that. She had a number of follow-up visits. She had a visiting nurse a couple times. He in particular had a little bit of trouble with the nursing and so on. But, it didn't seem anything troubling. And then they took the children for their 2-month shots. And at that time, neither of them was even up to 10 pounds yet. They were both somewhere around 9 pounds in weight at 2 months old. So that was on, I think, a Thursday. And the only thing that I noticed different was, because my daughter and the twins were living with me at the time, was a lot of crying and screaming during the night. And I remember, waking up, do you need me? And she was like, no, I can handle it. And, it just seemed like that was a normal thing that happened with babies. Then come Monday morning, Liam went unresponsive while he was being held. And we had to call 911. And he was taken to the local hospital and then airlifted into Boston. And that was the beginning of the end of our family as we knew it. Both of the children developed like really red eyes, which we did notice over the weekend.
So this is following the vaccinations.
Yes.
They developed red eye before Liam was unresponsive. You noticed
Yes.
that.
And honestly, none of us knew that it meant anything. I mean, I've had allergies my whole life. I have red eyes, so I didn't know. None of us knew that it meant anything in particular. But apparently it did. And we were accused of shaking the baby. And I was home with Paige, the other twin. Started getting calls from DCF saying, tell us about the abuse. And I was like, there is no abuse. He's sick. That's why he's in the hospital. And I was ordered to bring the other twin into Boston, which I did. And they did some kind of a scan on her, and then they said she had all these fractures, which she didn't, but they said she did. And they ended up putting her also in ICU and sticking her on IVs for a few days. And, the police, the DCF, neither of them ever lived with us again.
Neither babies?
No.
Did
No.
Liam survive?
No. He died 2 days later. After being in ICU, they took him off the life support. She was sent out to foster homes, and there were visits allowed at first, and sometimes I was allowed to go to them too.
Is this Paige?
Yes. So any of the pictures you see that are a little bit older are during DCF visits that were taken. So there was eventually a trial, care and protection trial, and both parents were deemed unfit parents because no one would admit to causing injuries to the children. So obviously that was horrible.
For your daughter,
Yes. So she, of course, was completely unemployable after that. She lost her job. She lost her focus. She lost everything. Her first Her first psych hospitalization was in 2009, right around Mother's Day. When I visited her, she just kept saying, "I'm a mother, but I have no one to be a mother to." Fast forward, she kind of got better from that. She was still with the dad. Another baby was going to be coming, same parents. I took my daughter to 2 different lawyers that had worked with us on the first case. They said, it's not going to be a problem. It's a closed case. It's a whole different thing, but it wasn't. They came into the hospital and took my other granddaughter away at 2 days old. So I don't want to get too far from the vaccines, but it's all kind of connected. It all kind of blends together. So both of my granddaughters are adopted. They're both doing well now. Fortunately, the older one ended up being adopted by her other grandmother. I had applied and told absolutely I was not allowed because I was a suspect, because my daughter lived with me when the incident happened. But that's fine, so I do get to see her, and my other granddaughter is adopted by a different family who's not related to us, but we know them, and they are wonderful, and I do get to see both of them, so I'm luckier than a lot of people, at least in that way. So
I just want to get back to, so your daughter, not only Liam dies following these shots and she gets accused of shaking or whatever.
Yes.
They then take away what's her name?
Paige
gets taken away, so she has to mentally deal with that. She then has another baby, and 2 days later they come and they take that baby. What did they say to her when they went in there?
They had come in the night before, which I believe was, if I remember right, was a Sunday night, and I just went, that's not good. Why would DCF people be working on a Sunday evening? And I wasn't there when they came to talk to her in the hospital at that time, but she, of course, called and told me. And they had moved by then. The parents were living in a different part of Massachusetts, so it was a different hospital, everything, but, I don't know, I guess they find out stuff, of course, from searches. So they said they were taking her based on history.
I can't imagine what she was going through.
Well, she handled it the best she could. I can't say that I would have done differently, but she did start to spiral after that. She started to get huge panic attacks, PTSD, anxiety, depression, bipolar. They kept stacking on the diagnoses. She did go back to school, and she got an associate's degree, but she had a really hard time with, first of all, finding jobs and then keeping jobs, because by then emotionally she just wasn't doing all that well. So fast forward, part of her not doing well was that she did do some drugs, and she ended up getting a lot of physical illnesses from that, and she ended up with an infection in her bones, and she was on IVs for 6 months, 4 hours, every 4 hours apart, so she had to go to a nursing home for that to happen. And they 911'd her to the hospital in August, and she was doing okay. They said she was fine and didn't need the PICC line anymore, and so on. They took it out. They were all set to discharge her the next day, and I got a call at work to come to the hospital right away because she had cardiac arrest. And what I found out was that she was very distraught at being discharged. She didn't feel she was ready, I guess. And the social worker went to talk to her, and they found her unresponsive in the bathroom in her hospital room. And she died at 36 years old.
I'm so sorry. This is tragic.
So, getting back to the granddaughters, like I said, they're both doing well. The older one, I don't believe gets any vaccines unless they're absolutely required, but she doesn't get anything recommended. She doesn't have any kind of exemption or anything. The younger one, and she is overall good, but she does get a lot of, respiratory and ear infections and stuff. But she did have a diagnosis of epilepsy, and she was on seizure meds for quite a while. But right now, she hasn't had any seizures in a couple of years. She's doing good. The younger one is also an awesome kid. Her family does do all the vaccinations, and she just has she has ADHD, and she has some anxiety issues, but I think some of them might even go back to earlier childhood stuff. I'm not sure what the anxiety is related to, but she's great. I have a good relationship with both of them, and I'm thankful for all that part.
So let's summarize this up, okay? Because it all started with the 2-month shots.
The 2 month.
So the 2-month shots, and so that, to remind everybody, there she is, beautiful Sarah, and that's the father?
Yes.
Okay, and they get pregnant and they have twins. So there's probably the earliest picture of those twins.
Yeah. Oh, that's my mother with them. That would be the twins' great grandmother.
And you can see that he is sort of jaundiced looking, right?
Yes.
So he probably got. Did he get Hep B and vitamin K at birth?
Yes, they both did.
Of course they did. And then they go to the 2-month shots, and they have this sort of red eye thing, apparently. So he gets responsive Liam, and gets taken into hospital, where they immediately suspect abuse. Which you've heard the story so many times. They then make you bring in Paige because they're now worried about her. They then take her and put her in ICU, even though she's not sick.
Correct.
And hook her up to drugs or whatever, or IVs, or we don't know.
And discharge her with Tylenol.
Give her Tylenol.
And did some follow-up scan 2 months later. And of course, there was no evidence of fractures because she never had any in the first place.
Okay. And so then, tragically, we lose Liam. He dies. They take him off the life support, you say. So whatever that means. And then Paige then gets fostered out. You're not allowed to look after her.
No.
And nor is Sarah. Sarah, I don't even know how she coped with that, then eventually does get pregnant again, gives birth in hospital, and 2 days after giving birth in hospital, the baby is taken away from her, and you as her mother are not allowed to look after that baby. It has to go to another family member.
Correct.
Then Sarah obviously has issues following this utterly tragic story, and uses things to help her get through it, I presume. Some kind of drugs, right? Okay. No judgment at all from anybody. And then she gets an infection in her bones and is admitted and has a cardiac arrest and dies. I would think every viewer listening to this will say the same. This is an utterly tragic story. And it all started with the vaccinations.
Yes, it's this giant mushroom cloud that totally derailed. It's nothing you could ever possibly think of. I don't know. We thought we did everything right in, planning for the babies. We were happy about it, although it was a little bit of a surprise at first. But I got to say, vaccines is not a thing we talked about between Sarah and myself. We always were skeptical about flu shots. Like, I had never had any, ever, up until that point. Neither had she. But as far as childhood vaccines, we never thought about it. I do remember they had just, when they got home from the appointment and said, oh, the babies had their shots. And I was like, oh my gosh, aren't they so little? And they were like, well, they said we had to. So, and then we weren't allowed to do anything on VAERS because we had no standing, because the state owned the children, if you know what I mean. So we were told we couldn't even do a VAERS report. And then, of course, all the time that they were in foster care before they were officially adopted, you have no choice. You get every vaccine there is that's on a schedule of any kind. So then just myself, I never had flu shots until they started making a really big fuss about it. I've worked in healthcare for a long time. It was never a big deal. It was just sign a form, yes or no, and you would get a little lecture if you said no, but there was no follow-up until a few years ago. And unfortunately, I did not have an exemption, so I did have a couple of flu shots until I finally figured out how to find a form, because at that time all the forms I could find were about school more so than about adults. So I did end up having a couple and I wrote things on the forms like, under duress, I don't agree with this. And where it said, I accept it, I said, no, I'm forced to do it. But nevertheless, I did it. So then I did get the religious exemption, fortunately, just before the COVID stuff. I had started a new job in the fall 2019 into winter 2020. I skipped every possible deadline for getting a flu shot, and then I got a call from the administrator, and I was told that I was going to be suspended for 10 days, and if I still didn't get the flu shot, I was going to be fired. So I made sure that I had my form all filled out. I went and got it notarized, even though it's not even required in Massachusetts to get it notarized. And I printed out every regulation from the state, from the Mass Senior Care Association, for everything. I put them all in a big folder and left them on her desk, and she never harassed me about it again. But then the COVID thing seemed like when you had a form that said all vaccines, that kind of became an issue, and somehow that wasn't covered by the religious exemption, and I had to go through all the stuff other people have to go through, of getting a letter from my pastor and all this other stuff. So the day before I was supposed to be let go, they called me down. I figured it was to turn in my keys and tell me what to do about emails and stuff, and they said, no, the company has accepted your exemption, but then I had to sign this form that I was like putting the entire world at risk and all that stuff, and supposed to wear all this stuff, face shield, the orange ribbon of shame, because the other people got a green ribbon, they got just nonsense, but whatever, I'm still employed. The company that made that form is not in this state, so it's okay. I'm there.
Oh, you've been through a lot.
I have.
Yeah. This is the first time you've publicly told this
I've
story.
never talked about this in public. I figure legally there's nothing else they can do to us at this point.
Is this Liam here?
Yes.
It's just tragic. We're really so sorry this happened to your family. I mean, it's such a huge loss.
Yeah. So many futures have been changed or taken away totally because of all this.
Thank you for telling us the story.
You're welcome. I didn't think I could do it, but I'm doing it.
You did it really well. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
The fight for children's health has hit a turning point, and your support has brought us to this moment.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
pledged to find out what is driving the country's rise in autism.
Scientists are scared to ask the question.
This is an epidemic, and we need to find the causes, and we need to stop it.
Other issues CHD has been pushing for years are finally gaining mainstream traction.
The vaccine itself does have profound risk.
We are removing pharma members from FDA advisory committees.
We are working to change the federal fluoride recommendations.
Removing all petroleum-based food dyes.
We're going to change things for real this time.
This is the moment we've been fighting for. Please give today and help us make the most of this opportunity.